Brammer Buck and Hickman are proud to be a Rubik's company who are the #1 supplier for bearing and MRO products in the whole of Europe. So our aim today is to highlight some of the issues that occur in the food and drink sector, what SKF products are available as a solution to these issues, and how applying these solutions to your applications will prove to be an advantage to your maintenance teams and also to your production teams. Now that falls in very nicely with the Brammer Buck and Hickman company strategy: apply, advise and advance. So to the introductions. My name's Alan Stewart and I'm the bearing product manager for SKF products here at Brammer Buck and Hickman. Since serving my time as an engineering apprentice, I've worked in various industries, from the automotive industry to Ministry of Defence, and also in the bearing and MRO industry for the last 38 years or so, both in distribution and as a bearing manufacturer. I've worked with Brammer Buck and Hickman for the last 4.5 years, initially as a technical bearing specialist and also in my current role. To present to us today is David Oliver of SKF. Dave is the channel and platform manager for bearings and units. He's also the industrial manager for food and beverages. He's been with, as we said, he's been with SKF for 16 years and been in the bearing industry for some 40 years. So there's no one really more qualified to tell us about the SKF Food Line product range from SKF. Bearings in the food and drink industry have always been a source of concern to the maintenance engineers and to the production facilities. This concern has only intensified over the years as the regulations within the industry have become more and more stringent than before. Whether it's to be worries about lubrication being food safe, or will the lubrication find its way into the product, or the strict washdown regimes causing premature failure of the bearings. All this ultimately can culminate in costly downtime, which none of us want. SKF have spent a considerable amount of resource on this problem and have produced a range of products that will reduce your need to relubricate the bearings, so saving money on replacement lubrication and the subsequent labour costs to dispense the re-greasing programme, while at the same time giving you peace of mind that during those washdowns the bearings are protected from the high pressure caustic solutions used. But more importantly, these bearings will help you to reduce costly downtime within your production facilities.
Thank you very much, Alan. And first of all, I'd just like to thank Brammer Buck and Hickman for inviting SKF to present to you today. And obviously thank all of the attendees for taking the time to join us. I know time is valuable, so it's very much appreciated. We're going to spend sort of 30 minutes or so talking to you about a little bit about the food and beverage industry, but literally that will be relatively short, and then spend some time just taking you through a typical food product development process, and then quite a bit of time in the latter part talking about some very specific product examples relevant to the food and beverage industry. So first of all, just touching on the industry itself, how we look at the industry, the things that we feel we need to understand about the industry before we can begin to look at products themselves. So on the left-hand side of this slide, you'll see that the things that we feel we need to understand, the things that we need to be talking to our customers in the food and beverage industry about. You will all realise, if you're involved in the industry, that it is the most heavily regulated industry on the planet. So you have to have a good understanding of the implications of NSF, H1 registration for lubricants, FDA, EC approvals for plastics, rubbers, and all these sorts of materials, the religious compliance requirements for halal, kosher, the very stringent allergen regulations at the moment. People like EHED, European Hygienic Engineering Design Group, who set standards for hygienic design of equipment in the food industry. So really have to closely understand the regulation. We clearly need to also have a good understanding of the customer needs in the industry, the customer targets, the drivers, the key performance indicators, and typically we see them around 3 areas. Key to the sort of products we're talking about, that is safety, in particular food safety and people safety, around business value, so that's reducing total cost of ownership, maximising line availability, line efficiency and OEE, and then finally the environment and sustainability, so this is around water usage, energy uses, waste reduction, carbon, CO2 emissions, etc. as well. All of these have to play a part because they are the targets that you, our customers, have. And finally, understanding the processes. I mean, the complexity of processes within the food and beverage industry is vast and wide. We try and break them down into sort of manageable chunks, if you like. So we can break it down into what we see common processes, so preparation areas, processing by the application of heat, processes by the removal of heat, and then finally post-processing. Across all of those, acknowledging and understanding that there are very wet, very abrasive and contaminating environments. And then in the wider plant, the auxiliary equipment, so fans, pumps, compressors and the like, and then the overall strategy that sits around all of that. So we feel as a minimum having an understanding of these 3 areas, regulation, key performance indicators and processes, we can begin to align our existing products with the needs of the industry and look at gaps which will enable us to consider product development for products for the food and beverage industry as well. So there's a range of these shown in the 4 images, and the one in the top right hand corner talks very specifically about product that we develop for relubrication free operation. So that is a key driver for us in the food and beverage industry, and we believe a key need coming to us from the food and beverage industry. We'll talk about that in a little more detail as we go through the slides. Just talk to you a little bit about value. Clearly, if we're talking about technology, if we're talking about technology upgrades, there is a cost to that. Typically, the cost of product increases as we elevate the technology and the capability. So we also have to then assure our customers that that will represent value to them. So that there's a simple shareholder value tree to the right-hand side of this slide. And typically the increase in shareholder value, or if it's an owner, the owner value, is around 3 areas. That is the reduction of cost, the improvement of output, and compliance. So, you know, if we can impact any or more of these by the application of new technology or alternative technology, then we're increasing shareholder value at quite a high level within an organisation. You know, we're facilitating improvement and acceptance of the technology as being of value. I've just got a specific example which I just quickly want to run through with you to illustrate this. So this is a customer that we work with in the confectionery industry, and the image to the bottom here you'll see is a wafer oven, and there are a number of tongs or baking plates on this wafer oven with 4 wheels and an opening bearing, and each of those wheels have 2 bearings in. So we went to talk to this customer some years ago now, and you know, they had 13 ovens, and because we felt we had an understanding of the process and we knew that it involved elevated temperatures and contaminated environments, we could start a conversation saying, well, you know, you're operating at 180 degrees C, right at the limit of grease technology. You know, you must have some reliability issues. Can we help you with those? And the response was, well, no, actually, we don't have any particular reliability issues. We manage that quite well, thank you. So the conversation moved on, and the way that they were doing that was to have a rolling program across 13 ovens of removing an oven every 16 weeks to basically take out all of the bearings out of the wheels and re-lubricate them, so that the line involved would be down for 2, maybe 3 days to do this process, depending on other maintenance that was required. But they could happily run them for 16 weeks without problem. So obviously the conversation evolved, and you know, we talked about potential technologies that could extend or eliminate the relubrication. And to cut a long story short, we developed a technology, a graphite cage making the whole of the wheel effectively, which enabled this particular customer to achieve 4 years relubrication-free operation. So a relatively high initial cost in terms of buying higher technology product, but then the cost savings moving forward were significant. And if we look at the shareholder value that we delivered to this particular customer, you can see in terms of cost reduction, we significantly took cost out of the maintenance budget. So they didn't have to have all the staff available for the rolling program of relubricating bearings. We improved output, so they didn't have lines that were down for 2 or 3 days every 16 weeks. So they have the ability to have them running for longer periods. Improved performance because the reliability improved at the same time, so there weren't any unplanned stops at all. And we ensured compliance. The graphite contained within the bearings was an NSF H1 registered product. It improved people safety because there was far less maintenance being done. And we improved from an environmental perspective because the grease, the relubrication, the grease that was being consumed didn't have to be manufactured in the first place, and then it didn't have to be disposed of when it was removed from the bearing, the old used grease. So a significant improvement from an environmental perspective as well. So that just illustrates how the application of new technologies can significantly impact on quite high level performance indicators with organisations right up to shareholder value. We have to talk about lubrication because lubrication typically in industry represents around about 1/3 of all bearing failures. We believe in the food and beverage industry that it's significantly higher than that, and lubrication and lubrication related issues probably relate to well over 50% of all bearing failures. So understanding lubrication, understanding how to manage lubrication, maybe as a strategy, is really important. So quickly understanding the correct lubricants to be using. Typically, they have to be food grade, so understanding their performance criteria and where and how they might be used. If you are doing manual relubrication, then, you know, are you doing it correctly? Do you know what you're doing? Do you know what intervals? Do you know how to apply the grease and when and where? All of these things, because if you don't, then you're likely to be introducing more problems than are being resolved. Can you automate relubrication? Because the best method of relubrication is little and often, but if you're doing it manually, of course, that's not practical. So being able to automate it, whether with simple single point lubricators or machine-wide lubrication systems, automating lubrication or relubrication is a good method. Obviously, we can't talk about lubrication without talking about sealing and high sealing efficiency and increasing sealing efficiency. Keeping the environment away from the bearing system is a good way of prolonging lubrication, prolonging bearing life, improving reliability. And finally, to what is the key focus for SKF in terms of product development, trying to eliminate relubrication completely. Typically in the food and beverage industry, applications are rotating relatively slowly under relatively light load. So the demands on the lubricant are only around the environment. They aren't typically around the load and speed. So if we can isolate the bearing internals from the environment, we have a long grease life or a long lubricant life. That enables the use of relubrication-free capabilities, of which there are a few examples here, and of which we're going to go on and talk about in more detail through the rest of these slides. Before we start to move on to talk about product, I just want to show this video. This is some work we did with a third party, looking at bacteria on conveying type applications around the mounted bearing units on conveyor rolls. So hopefully this will give you an illustration of why there's a need to develop what we term food safe bearing technology.
When it comes to the processing equipment that comprises the food zone, food and beverage companies employ strict cleaning procedures to ensure the safety of their products. But what if mounted bearing units near the food zone presented an unseen and often unaccounted for risk? SKF wanted to answer the question, how clean is clean behind and around the bearing units? To find out, we've been carefully examining the cleaning processes in food and beverage plants, testing production bearing units for bacteria, and replicating cleaning procedures in a lab environment for deeper analysis. The results of these efforts have been eye-opening. Across the board, the total concentration of bacteria sampled from bearing units remained high and, in some cases, even increased after washdown, amounting to 1 million bacteria per gram on average. The same high concentration of bacteria also appeared in bearing end covers, where excess grease accumulates and often escapes when overfilled. Even Listeria was present in some samples from a fish plant, a bacteria that can cause up to a 30% mortality rate for people with lowered immune systems. So how can bearing end units get contaminated in the first place? Food residues get behind the mounting unit and inside the bearing cavity through the shaft gap during both processing and pressure cleaning. And because this mounting surface does not dry between production runs, it fosters the growth of bacteria. Contamination from behind the unit has been observed even in the case of units mounted with spacers. Now that the bacteria on the bearing is thriving, it can risk spreading in numerous ways. Pressure cleaning of the food zone can create aerosol droplets that contain food particles, grease, and bacteria. Listeria infection can occur through inhalation, risking the safety of people. But also, bacteria can stay in the air for hours and settle onto production areas after disinfection is complete. In addition to droplets and particulate matter, bacteria-infested bearing grease can be spread toward the food zone during pressure cleaning, even when final disinfectant is washed away before production starts. While the cleaning agent may kill some of the bacteria from the floor, the rest that survives can be carried on shoes to other areas or end up in the wastewater system where bacteria concentration remains high. The same goes for allergens, which can get trapped in bearing grease and expelled and spread in similar ways. Proactive food safety is critical to your success. If your mounted bearings are putting that at risk, it's worth considering a hygienically designed, fully sealed alternative, such as SKF's Food Line ball bearing units.
So hopefully that gives you an illustration of the risks of lubrication, over-lubrication, greasing to purge that we see within the food and beverage industry. We talked there about the Food Line ball bearing unit blue range, which we're going to give you more information on now as we move through the slides. So first of all, just a little bit of an overview of SKF's Food Line bearing family. More and more the industry is talking to us about the need for components that go close to the food stream to be not just food grade but food safe. And therefore all of the products that you can see here and that we'll talk about in more detail in the coming minutes are what we would term food safe. They can be applied close to the product food zone and are perfectly okay for incidental contact with food. So first of all, I'd like to talk to you about the Food Line ball bearing units blue range, which we covered in the video to a certain extent as well. So a number of groups of products within this, the basic housed units, stainless steel units. Also, we have, just as an example, the fryer bearing that you can see there. That's a bearing unit that's designed for use up to 180 degrees centigrade and very cleverly uses the cooking oil in frying applications as a lubricant. So that's just another technology within the Food Line ball bearing unit range. So I'm going to talk to you specifically now about the development of the Food Line ball bearing units blue range, and they were developed to support a growing need within the food and beverage industry, and that is to help with proactive food safety programs, which is attracting considerable investment in the food industry at the moment. And before I start to talk in detail about that, I just want to give you just a little bit of a potted history. SKF first introduced what we call a Food Line ball bearing unit around about 2010, 2011, and that's the white unit you can see to the left-hand side of this slide. And the clarion call from industry at that time was relubrication free. High pressure water is killing our greases. You know, we need something to withstand that. So on the right-hand side here, you can see an outline of the product, and we developed a sealing system which could resist high pressure water. And we tested these units in our own test facilities up to 100 bar, and water applied at 100 bar could not penetrate the sealing system. So that was the objective, and it enabled us to provide a reliable relubrication-free option to many customers in the food and beverage industry. And it was a very successful product for both us, Brammer Buck and Hickman, and our customers as well. However, we did see some failure modes that we were really at the time struggling to understand. So we embarked on a big research program to try and understand the true root cause failure methodology for these units in these isolated applications. And that was revealing in itself. You can see some images here of the types of testing that was done, the equipment that was used, some of the results. And we finally did identify the root cause, and it was around the nature and the type of cleaning fluids that were being used in the industry. But in doing so, we found a number of mitigating technologies around lubricants, greases in particular, sealing types, and materials. And that enabled us then to plan a product development program to upgrade the white units to the current blue range that we're going to talk about in the next slide. Industry at the same time was communicating to us that, okay, relubrication free has now been mastered. We have that, we're happy with it. We know that we can get units that withstand high pressure cleaning, etc. But we're now starting to struggle with a massive increase in product recalls. You can see some statistics here from the UK and FDA-based ones from the North American market. A lot of it was around undeclared allergens, pathogens, bacteria. And the clarion call from the industry was changing now towards how do we avoid these product recalls? How do we avoid contamination of our food lines with things like greases and lubricants and bacteria generated by that? So the product that we developed was the Foodline ball bearing unit blue range, and because of the increase in product recalls, because of the increasing regulation and those becoming stricter across the globe, you know, we very much wanted to support the food and beverage industry in these proactive food safety programs, so that the new range of product was designed around reducing the risks to safety. So that's both food safety and people safety. The ball bearing unit was a fully hygienic design, meeting the standards set out by the European Hygienic Engineering Design Group. So it had the right geometry, cleanability, washability, etc. Increased performance and uptime. So we knew some of the key failure modes in the industry, and we developed a very specific patented sealing system to work with the types of contaminants that were causing premature bearing failure, so increasing performance and uptime. The continued reduction of maintenance and related costs, so maintaining the relubrication-free capability, eliminating the regreasing, extending the bearing life because of the sealing and because of the advanced lubricants that we were able to develop as a result of the testings that we've done, and finally to foster a sustainable culture. So reducing environmental costs. So because of the hygienic design and the washability, third-party tests tell us that around a third less heated water is required in rinsing for keeping open units. If you're not re-greasing, you don't need absorbents and cloths to clean grease off the bearings if you're dry cleaning. And recyclability. The blue range units are recyclable in the main, or energy recoverable where they're not recyclable. So if we talk just a little bit about bearing performance, I just want to show you this animation of the bearing sealing system that we've now designed. As said, it is patented, so a completely new system. We call it a gutter system. So when high pressure water is applied for rinsing, the seal closes down against the face of the bearing, sealing the whole of the inside of the sealing system away from the high pressure water. So that deals with the high pressure part of it. When the penetrative, caustic or acid-laden cleaning fluids are applied, they will penetrate sealing. But because of the low surface tension, the gutter seal captures them and they travel around the gutter and then they exit from the base of the seal. So we're working with the penetrative nature and caustic nature of the fluids as opposed to trying to fight against them, which is virtually impossible because they are designed to penetrate. So that enables us to significantly increase the reliability and almost eliminate one of the failure modes, one of the common failure modes that we see in the food and beverage industry, which is to do with the penetrative and caustic nature of many of the cleaning fluids that are used. If we look then at what that delivers to us, if we look at a typical application, and this is by no means unusual, of customers, say, replacing their existing units every 9 to 12 months maybe, and relubricating maybe weekly or monthly over that period as well. When we bought in the Y Series Food Line, the white units, some 10, 11 years ago, we saw an immediate improvement in reliability, that being relubrication free as well. So increasing to 18, maybe 24 months in certain cases. And since we bought the Food Line ball bearing unit blue range to market, we're now seeing typical lives in these same circumstances of 30 months plus. Obviously, we only sort of launched it a few years ago. So certainly the ones that we had on trial for 12 months, 18 months before that are now into the third year of application. So some significant improvements in reliability and performance as well. Industry approved components, so everything that needs to be is blue, which enables and elevates and gives the opportunity for optical detection. So if any elements of them fall into the food stream, first of all, they are FDA and EC certified, so they won't leach nasty chemicals, carcinogenics, etc., into the food stream should they ever get into it. But because they're blue, that they're more easily detectable as well. All of the polyurethane materials, the thermoplastics, the nitrile rubbers, sealing elements, etc., are FDA and EC approved materials. So they're certified by FDA and EC. The lubricant itself, the bearing is pre-lubricated with a grease that outperforms anything that we've ever had in the food and beverage industry. It actually deals quite well with caustic-laden contaminants. So we try via the sealing to keep those out of the bearing. But if they do penetrate in, the grease life is significantly higher than any other grease we've had before. It's a brand new formulation. So it is an NSF-H1 registered grease. It does meet halal and kosher certification requirements, and it is certified as an allergen-free grease as well. And obviously, all of the other components are stainless steel where necessary as well. So a wide range of products. We cater for shaft diameters of 20 to 50 millimeters, which covers the vast majority that we see within the food and beverage industry. You can see the various shapes that we have here, again covering the vast majority of shapes and bolt hole configurations that we see in the industry, and a supporting stainless steel range of units, stainless steel range of housings as well. We're continually developing this. Again, customers are talking to us about what they like and don't like about the product, so that there are more developments coming through. The Foodline Compact on the left side here, customers are telling us there are a range of products that for a given shaft diameter, the bolt centers are smaller than the standard unit. So we've developed a range of products that meet those different standards for the bolt holes. We call them Foodline Compact, 4-bolt and 2-bolt flange range for that. We have an open end cover, in case anybody was wondering, and we're also developing an alternative offer whereby the end cover is magnetic detectable material as well. So some customers are asking us for that because they see it as a detachable component that could potentially be damaged. And there's a brand new range of Foodline stainless steel housed units coming in the early part of 2022. So they have the same design for hygiene features, end cover, back seal, as the blue range units that you've seen in the previous slides. So that's the Foodline ball bearing unit range that I've touched on. Obviously, we'd be happy to speak to you in more detail about that should you want more information. But now I'd like to talk about the Foodline ball bearing range. One of the things that we do when we're working with customers, we will quite often, go and have a look at the stock holding, the storage that is held on site. And it often surprises us and then surprises the customer as well, that almost nothing that is on the shelf is what we would call food safe. Very little of it has a food grade lubricant in it. And the range that we're representing here today is fully compliant out of the box with all necessary food regulation, and is, as we would term, food safe, not just food grade, food safe. Food grade is typically what our competitors class, maybe it has an NSF H1 registered lubricant in it, so they would consider that food grade. When we talk about food safe, all of the other components are suitable for incidental contact with food as well. So that certainly applies to the Foodline ball bearing range, which covers stainless steel D-groove ball bearing, which has been on the market since around 2015. High nitrogen corrosion resistant stainless steel variants for very aggressive applications, and now just being launched literally as we speak, a D-groove ball bearing range, so a standard bearing, not corrosion resistant at all, but out of the box, suitable for a food environment as well. I'll talk about these in a little bit more detail. You can see the range here, that the new D-groove ball bearing from Standard Materials is really suited for non-corrosive environments, so maybe the preparation areas, maybe some of the post-processing areas, non-corrosive environments, or maybe where there's a high load situation, because when you use stainless steel, it's not a great bearing material, if we're honest. So there are some load carrying capacity restrictions on a stainless steel bearing compared to a standard material bearing. And finally, for the most harsh and the most extreme conditions, you know, we have a high nitrogen corrosion resistant D-groove ball bearing with ceramic rolling elements. This is effectively an aerospace material that's been industrialized. It's got a very homogeneous design and material, so it's got very high load carrying capacity, probably even higher than a standard ball bearing. The ceramic rolling elements enable it to accommodate poor lubrication environments or contaminated lubrication environments, and it's a food safe bearing. So all of these bearings have an NSF H1 registered lubricant fill as standard. All of the nitrile rubbers involved in the sealing materials are FDA and EC approved. The corrosion resistant variants have a stainless steel backing plate to the seal as well. Some of our competitors, even in stainless steel bearings, use a mild steel backing plate for the rubber seal, and that corrodes over time. The standard D-groove ball bearing has an RSH seal, which we believe to be a best-in-class seal and contaminant resistant, so resisting contaminant entering the bearing enclosure. All of these bearings are also available with alternative lubricants. So we mentioned solid oil here. Solid oil is a lubricant that doesn't emulsify in the presence of water. It's chemically inert, so it doesn't get washed out, and it provides 2 to 4 times more lubricating oil than a corresponding grease fill would as well. So advantages to the use of the food grade solid oil technology in this range of products as well. Just talking specifically about them now, the new Foodline D-groove ball bearing that's been released as we speak, increased food safety compliance and reliability, so a food safe product. We've talked already, high performance food grade NSF H1 registered grease, particularly suitable for the food and beverage industry. FDA EC approved, high efficiency, low friction seals, which is SKF RSH technology. And it's an SKF Explorer performance class bearing, so the highest standards in terms of the overall performance class of the bearing. The Foodline stainless steel D-groove ball bearing, as said, it's been out a number of years now, but it has the same NSF H1 registered grease within the bearing, FDA EC approved seals, obviously in a blue colour as well for optical detectability. All of the components within this bearing are stainless steel, so offer corrosion resistance as well. But again, for corrosive environments, out of the box, suitable for use close to the food area and suitable for incidental contact with food as well. And finally, what we call the ultra corrosion resistant bearing, the high nitrogen corrosion resistant stainless steel bearing. So the same attributes, the materials made of HNCR stainless steel, ceramic rolling elements, the same FDA EC approved materials for the seal, and then being blue as well, and the same NSF H1 registered lubricant for the bearings as well. We see these bearings used, just as one example, in aseptic applications where hydrogen peroxide is used as a disinfectant, and hydrogen peroxide will attack standard 440 type stainless steel. So these materials more and more are being used in that sort of environment and other aggressive environments as well. So that's all I have time to talk to you about today in terms of the products themselves. Happy to continue that conversation if you wish moving forward. But I'd just like to touch on now about how we might find ways to identify where this product might be used. As said already in previous slides, the food and beverage industry is always searching for ways to be proactive towards the regulatory compliance requirements and in avoiding, obviously, the very, very costly food safety related product calls as well. It has a high cost both in a monetary value and in a reputational value if a food recall has to be enacted. So we work very closely with industry and we can offer a joint SKF, Bramah Buchan Hickman technical assessment. So that's designed to time spent on plant to identify many opportunities, and typically we can identify 10 to 20 opportunities which can lead to real savings. So we'd expect to do a technical assessment, a detailed line walk with somebody from the organisation who's familiar with the maintenance that is done on site. And if we can do that, then we will identify solutions to existing issues. We will literally there and then identify simple fixes and quick wins. We'll identify further opportunities for technology upgrades. We'll be able to provide references from similar applications, similar solutions that we've already achieved. And working with the customer, develop an improvement plan based upon the practicality of application and the criticality of the equipment, a route map to potentially deploy technology in the facility, some of the technology you've seen in the preceding slides as well. So this is available to you via Bramah Buchan Hickman, and we would be delighted to have an opportunity to work with you in terms of the technical assessment moving forward. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope it was of interest. I'll hand you back now to our host, Alan.
Thanks for that, Dave. That was excellent. So can I first of all just thank David for taking the time to give us this presentation today. I hope that you have found it both interesting and informative, but most of all that it's been beneficial to help you tackle the applications where you know there's a solution required, and hopefully you'll have seen a possible solution to your application here this afternoon. But we are certainly free to speak to you, to have a look at the applications and speak in more detail. The technical assessment and also a maintenance assessment that we currently do along with SKF is that SKF technical expertise is available to you via Bramah Buchan Hickman. It's a free assessment. We're happy to come on site and do that and get working with you. So please ask the question. It doesn't cost anything to ask a question. Ask us and we can point you in the right direction.